Hello and welcome to the BTI Market Outlook and Client Service Review for 2022. We're very excited you've joined us today. I'm Michael Rynowecer. I'm the president and founder of the BTI Consulting Group. I'm also known as the Mad Clientist, and I blog at the Mad Clientist every Thursday, as I have today. Hopefully you all got that. Before we get started, want to get through a couple housekeeping rules. We have an absolutely enormous turnout today. This is the largest turnout we've had in the 13 years we've been doing this, so thank you very much. We cannot take questions during the webinar, but please send your questions to btiwebinars@bticonsulting.com, and we will respond after the session. I'd like to start by really talking about what you can't avoid by reading the legal press right now, which is there's so much talk about the Great Resignation. And we certainly understand that. We understand the pressures of keeping talent, especially at the associate level, and recruiting talent, but we're looking at it a little bit differently. What we're seeing is a big squeeze, and that squeeze is coming from certainly the talent wars, the talent retention, the recruiting, the ability to get more out of the attorneys, the associates that we have, but also the client side. The clients are going through a similar kind of experience where they are experiencing turnover. They are, looking at their jobs very differently than they did just a year ago. And what happens when they start thinking about their jobs in different ways and expect more from their jobs, they expect more from their law firms at the same time. You're going to see as we go through today that the research is revealing that there could be some collateral damage from what's going on in the corporate counsel world. And that collateral damage, if we don't manage it, will be some law firms who end up kind of focusing on one and not the other, and not providing the equilibrium that's going to be required to really get your way through this. At the end of the day, when we all look back on this and hopefully it becomes a memory, it's our view that there's going to be some law firms that have figured out the equilibrium, and we're going to have some absolutely delicious lemonade. But at the same time, there's going to be few that maybe have some lemons and are wondering kind of what's going on, what went on, what happened. And really, the first place to start when you're thinking about this is really with the associates. So, when we look at the associates, we measured their satisfaction during the pandemic at the earlier stages in 2020, when it was almost downright surprising how satisfied they were. 7.4 is a pretty reasonable score in job satisfaction surveys. But in 2021, they dropped all the way down to 6.3. On a 10-point scale, that's a pretty significant drop. Now, if you want to dig into this just a little bit further, what we find is those mid-year associates, those 3 to 5 years, they're actually, right around a 5.3 or so. We'll call that a 5.3. So they're down here somewhere, and they are the least happy. And of course, they're the ones we want to leverage the most. So understanding how we can tap into these associates, understanding how we can keep them, understanding what we can do to make them excited about the careers at the law firms where they are, is going to be a big part of this equation and impact how we can service clients, as we're going to see before we're done this afternoon. Now, when we interviewed and we surveyed about 500 or so associates, only 52% recommended their current firm to appear. And they had lots of reasons where they did. They had a lot of reasons why they didn't. We're going to go over some of those in just a minute. But this is just the surface level. If you look at it, 13% fewer women are satisfied in their job and recommend their law firm to appear than men. 40% believe that they're well mentored, which of course means that 60% believe they're not. These are kind of core to associates wanting to stay, wanting to be appreciated at their firms. And if 60% don't think they're getting it, well, that's a red flag with or without a talent war. Only 52% of men, 38% of women think that their law firms are actually committed to helping their career. The rest are kind of looking at it as it's a transaction. I work here. As one associate said to me, I understand I give up my life. That's part of the deal. But they expect something in return. And the more they get in an investment, the more likely they are to stay. Interestingly enough, for those of you that have been through our client service and client expectation webinars and training and client feedback, you know that being committed to help is also the most important attribute for clients. So we've got some commonality here. And as soon as we start showing how we can be more committed, then all of a sudden we're going to see a difference in how associates are thinking about the firms that they are with. So what do we do? How do we communicate this to associates at a practical level? And that, begs the question, why associates stay where they do. The number one reason is career building. If they think that their firms are providing the opportunity to be able to advance their career, whether it's with the firm or whether it's not, they will want to stay, because ultimately, until they hit partner or the career level they see as their peak, they will want to keep building those skills to get there. Second, which is close, is learning marketable skills. Now, marketable skills certainly help a career, but a firm can take active steps to show the career path, where learning marketable skills are a little bit more independent. Those skills will be valuable to the firm, will be valuable in other places, and valuable to the associates as well. This is a big one. Good people, or better people. And, what's the definition of good people? We really probed in on this. And it's things like the attorneys, the partners provide feedback with the criticism and corrections of their work. They're not looking for 2-hour downloads, but a number of them said, the 30 seconds, the 90 seconds I get with the criticism of why I have to change this is the difference between me feeling like I'm super isolated and alone, and me feeling like they're investing in me, I'm being mentored, and I'm getting a career built. So somehow finding that 30 to 90 seconds to add context to the feedback, to the criticisms, to the suggestions, is the difference between working with good people and working with not so good people. If I didn't mention it, forgive me if I repeat this, but I can't tell you how many associates said the really good people also say thanks. Simple as that. They say thanks. It may not happen every time, but at some point, somebody outside of a career review says, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for working the weekend. Thank you for staying late. Thank you. It's amazing how far a thank you will get you. And then finally, they see more opportunity at their existing firms. So that means that the more we talk to them, the more they understand about what it takes to either move ahead as an associate or make it to the partnership level. The more you communicate about that, the more likely they are to stay. So, whether it be saying thanks, whether it be including them in meetings so they can learn and listen, whether it's providing that feedback, these are the things that will make associates want to think about not leaving their firms, make them less available to other firms. And right now, these seem like pretty small things that firms can do. Doesn't require a big program, doesn't require big training, doesn't require technology, requires a conversation, requires no more than 3 to 5 minutes a conversation. But those 3 to 5 minutes are going to be so invaluable to both the firm, the associate, the career, and ultimately the partner that's providing that kind of feedback. Looking at the other side of the equation, why do associates go? Number one reason, well, money talks. One of the interesting pieces of feedback we got is that within certain bandwidths, within relevant ranges, law firms of certain sizes and certain levels in the market pay roughly the same. So if you can find an opportunity to change that equation, that's going to be attractive. Now, you can really offset that with the activities that make associates stay, because if they think they're going to make more money in the long run, they're going to do that because most of them are in it. 17% of associates are in it for the money today. That leaves, 83% that are looking for something else. So if you can provide a atmosphere or a culture where associates think that they will be making more in the long term where they are, this 20% is not going to get them. If they don't have those things, well, that 20% is an awfully loud calling card. They think it's going to build their brand. Even if they're moving to a lateral firm with the same level of perceived prestige, if they think they're going to get a new assignment, if they think they're going to get access to clients, if they think they're going to see work that they wouldn't see otherwise that's going to build their brand, that's a very, very powerful motivator to, having associates want to leave, which compels us to talk about what is in the future of associates' workload. Most associates tell us that the work stream is unending and they don't know what's coming next. Well, I would suggest to you that even on a 10-day basis, the more they know about what's coming down, the stronger they think they're building their brand. Knowledge equals brand building. Silence is a brand killer. So one way to keep associates from going is tell them more. Isolation, this is a big one. I mentioned it and why they stay. If you get an associate that isn't getting any kind of feedback other than corrections and criticisms and how to do their work differently and better, you've got somebody who's starting to feel like they don't really have people who they can talk to in a trusting way, whether it's about substantive work, whether it's about legal work, whether it's about their careers. You have individuals who see a lot of communication between partners, but don't see it among the associates or between the associates and the partners. These activities tend to get amplified. One incidence of no feedback turns into 30% mind share. It's very personally hurtful. It's one of the reasons that these individuals become attorneys and go to firms is so that they can interact, so that they can share, so they can learn. So the less of that they have, the more isolated they feel. It's disproportionate. So that little 3 to 5 minute conversation can go a long way to dispelling and removing this feeling of isolation, which of course, isolation is self-fulfilling. If you feel like you're alone, you tend to not want to share with other people, and then that becomes a self-driving force, which is what we want to avoid. And then I'm going to put the last two together because I think they're really important. But, promises, promises, promises. I got to tell you, if you're doing recruiting, it's a lot easier to make promises. It's a lot easier to paint what is likely a lateral move as a promotion or something that will turn into a near-term promotion. They're not encumbered by, the facts. When you go into a new law firm, you have a picture of what you hope it's like. Hopefully you've read the tea leaves from your interview process, but you know what your existing firm is like. You can assess the opportunity. You can assess what you know. You can assess the experience. The firms that are doing the recruiting, they don't have those kind of preconceived notions. And they're painting a pretty good picture. They're pretty slick. They know what to say. They know what's bothering these associates. So fighting these promises is, really the only way to do that is by making sure that the associates know the opportunity that lies with the firm they are, and somehow painting a picture of, not every firm is perfect. It's not always rosier on the other side. In fact, as I've heard a number of times from a number of associates, partners, and other individuals in different places, that the grass is always greener on the other side, but that's because mostly it's fertilized with manure. And trying to create a scenario where our picture is compelling enough where people can see through the promises or are skeptical enough to ask about them when they're interviewing are the kinds of things that make you keep your associates from straying, and the ability to keep them and not stray away. The other thing we're seeing, which I think is kind of interesting, and just in the last 12 months, is mid-sized firms and smaller firms have really changed their tune about this. I would say a year ago, most of the mid-sized firms and smaller firms we were talking to said, we can't match these salaries. We're not like the big firms. We just can't do that. And then, so many that I've talked to in the last 4 to 6 months have said the cost of losing an associate is just nothing compared to what we would have to pay to keep them. So we're matching. We're matching and bumping. We're giving stay bonuses. So that's starting to offset that a little bit. But it's interesting to see how the mid-size firms are really, and the smaller firms are starting to respond, at least head on to the one that might make them the most vulnerable 12 months or 18 months ago. But now they're getting a little more savvy and being able to use the salary to their advantage. And the mid-sized firms quite often can paint a more compelling and more specific picture about what their future is going to look like in terms of a career. So, we're seeing the war for talent certainly, tilt a little bit to the smaller and medium-sized firms fighting back, trying to keep their talent. And we'll see how that plays out over the next few months, especially if you reach out and start the compliment program, start the feedback program. This will be one way to help make it easier to keep the clients who are, of course, are on the other side of this equation, as we just had mentioned. So, we've got the associates that we just talked about. They're not as happy as they were. They're the least happiest that they've been, that we've seen in all our years of doing this. But if you look at it, we're at record demand. We have not seen demand for legal services higher than this in all the years we've been doing this, and any research that anybody else has done. And of course, that means that client workloads are soaring, as our attorney at law firm workloads are soaring. But the other variable, which is different from just a year ago, is that clients are now leaning more towards outside counsel. So during the pandemic, when it first kicked in, the typical larger company with $1 billion of revenue added, between 2 and 4 in-house counsel, which for them is a pretty big deal. They're pretty much put a lot of that hiring on hold. They're going to bring on maybe 1, and considering the spending and all their peak workloads, that money can only go to outside counsel. And in fact, it's their intent to use outside counsel more, maybe not more law firms, but give more work to the firms that they are going to be doing work with. So this kind of creates a scenario where you've got to worry about how your client is thinking, as you always did, but now it's a little bit more acute, and I'll show you why. Like the associates, the clients, the corporate counsel with the highest job satisfaction, that is, they're rating it a 9 or a 10 out of a 10 scale. They are happy. With fully more than half of all corporate counsel were really enjoying the challenges. I don't think they liked the pandemic, but in terms of a job, they liked, being on the front lines, providing really meaningful advice to business unit leaders and top management, holding their teams together, giving counsel to their teams on how to manage work-life balance. That was a really, enriching experience for them. Fast forward 12 months, not so much. Those that are really rating their job satisfaction high dropped to 39%. That's a very significant drop. And, the fact that they're not happy has a tremendous impact on law firms. So if I'm sitting there and I'm a partner in a law firm, and I've got a client that isn't really that happy in their job, it's going to be that much harder to meet their expectations. It's going to be that much harder to even understand their expectations, because clients, the less happy they are, the less focused they might be. They also might be looking for jobs. So you've got a lot of variables impacting the relationship. At the same time, you've got associates who, the lower the satisfaction, the harder it is to deliver excellent client service, both internally, but it seems to affect clients more because clients don't give them their performance reviews. So you've now got two big variables making it more difficult than it ever was to deliver excellent client service in the face of enormous demand from clients. So if we take a little walk back in history, this is the clientopia rate, or the rate at which clients recommend their primary law firm. For those of you on the webinar last year, you'll remember this chart. We had a peak in client service performance with 69% of clients recommending their primary firm. Law firms just really stepped up. But remember, associates were happier, clients were happier. Fast forward a year, and we have a little bit of a different picture. All of a sudden, if you look, you could see 2018, 2019, we've kind of stepped back to where we were in the pre-pandemic days. And a couple of reasons why. One, which I've already talked about, which that the people delivering the service and the people buying the service, there's a whole group of them that are not happy, which makes it very difficult. The second is, and I've said this many times before, is the highest level of client service that you ever deliver is the new standard. That's what clients expect all the time. And a lot of law firms just, they peaked in 2020. Now they're inundated with, maintaining and keeping their talent and meeting the peak workload and figuring out how to get it done. And, they're not able to raise the bar. Some are not able to keep up. So all of a sudden you've got a drop in client service, which means that all this new work that's going to come about may not be going to the firms that are there. So that kind of gives us a red flag in terms of, where are we with our clients? Have we slipped? Have we not slipped? Where's our clients? If I'm doing client feedback, I want to ask them about their satisfaction, because maybe you can help them. So we're going to be watching this very closely to see exactly how this plays out. But right now, clients will tell you, a lot of them, that expectations largely, less of them are being met. And as much of that is because client expectations are changing. And we blogged about that this morning, and we're going to talk about it before the webinar is over today. But there's one piece of data that really jumped out as we were doing the research and combing through what clients had told us. And what we did is we broke down the clientopia rate by years of experience. We talked about this a lot last year, and it's really playing out this year. If you look at this area between 0 and 2 years, what you've got is only 3 of 10 people recommending their outside counsel. So I just want to stop and think about that. That means that 7 of 10 corporate counsel who have been in their role for 2 years or less are not recommending their corporate counsel primarily because the client service isn't there. Now, it's also important to remember that if they have 0 to 2 years experience, they've spent the majority of this time in the pandemic. So you've got this group of clients that kind of walked into a firestorm. I can, most of them had no kind of onboarding. And if you think about it, what they're trying to do is get their arms around a fire hose. And unfortunately, most outside counsel can play a big role, but they're not doing it according to what we're hearing. And this is embedding kind of a viewpoint in new corporate counsel or people in new roles who may be there on average for 7 years. Law firms are getting branded. Law firms are, kind of getting put in categories as to how they perform very early in the career. So if I'm looking at this and I'm sitting and I'm in a law firm, what I'm going to do is I would encourage you, as soon as this webinar is over, I would take my most important clients. So whether that's your top 20, 50, 100, whatever the number is, I would get the names of all the people at clients that we deal with, not just the general counsel. Who do you interface with for any reason? I would go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn will tell you how long they have been in their current role. And it's important to understand they may be at the company 10 years, but they may only be in the role for 2. And being in the role is the defining indicator. And I would set up, a client understanding, client listening, client feedback. I would have a retention plan for my big clients. How are you going to convince these folks that you deliver superior client service, that you could help them get their arms around what they need to get their arms around? And of course, you're going to do that with clients where it's worth it, where you want to keep them, where you want to build them. But if you're not doing it at least at that, kind of strategic cohort level, there's big risk, because these are the beginnings of the relationship. And we don't want to start out our relationship as one of the firms that got switched out. We want to start out the relationship as the firm that stepped in and really helped. And you can all go and see exactly who it is within 60 minutes of the end of this call today. So how's this affecting behavior? Well, 61% of large companies hired a major law firm within the past year. The only thing that's surprising about this to me is how low it is. And part of that is clients want to use fewer law firms again. And, they're really kind of been through the process of hiring more law firms and increasing their panel sizes at the beginning of the pandemic. So now they're trying to rationalize that. And, still that's 60% of the market, more than half. That's a lot of hiring that's going on. But only 41% considered their primary firm. Now just think about that. I know the market is great. I know business is walking in the door, but we still have to worry about making sure we get all the business we can. We don't let other law firms into our best clients, and we provide, as much growth as we can, not just for growth's sake, not just for profit's sake, but growth offers opportunity to associates. And they equate growth with opportunity. So the more we can show, the better off we're going to be. Only 41% consider their primary firm. Just think about how low that number is. Why don't they consider their primary firm? One is they perceive that their law firms have hit capacity. And attorneys at law firms are sending an unintended message about the fact that they're at capacity or they're too busy to take on new work. I have a general counsel I've been interviewing for years and years, and he told me he has a 3 busy rule. If he asks his attorneys, one of the ones he really does a lot of work with, how they're doing, how's it going, and they use the word busy 3 times in the conversation, he presumes that they are at capacity. May not be, but that's what they presume. So I always counsel attorneys when clients say, how's it going, to say, great, it's excellent, things are really good. But saying you're busy says the wrong message. Second is that most clients don't understand all the services that their law firm provides. And more importantly, they don't understand who they would be working with if they hired them for more services. So if I'm using you for litigation, I've never met your class action folks. I've never met your IP litigation folks. So I don't know what I'm getting into, and I'm not sure I have the energy to go through the process of doing it because I'm just as busy as you are. So there's so many reasons. And then the last one, of course, is lack of business development. Somewhere right around 60% of clients say they get virtually no business development activity from their existing clients. They do get it from other firms, secondary firms, or firms they don't work with or work with in the past occasionally. So, we've got a lot of reasons why they don't get considered, but that translates into a lot of opportunity because only 31% hire their primary law firm. So that means that, we're getting on balance 1/3 of the business we could be getting from our existing clients. And unless you're loving the RFP process, unless you're loving the pitching process, most attorneys I know would rather get the work sole source, but we've got to go out and get it. Clients are too busy, and they also, want to believe that you want to get more work from them. They want to work with people who want to work with them. So you've got all these compounding factors. The saving grace, again, this is a peak market with record demand, but we still want to keep our primary clients, we still want to keep our strategic clients, and we don't want to be in a position where we get branded as the folks that came in and did a piece of the work. So let's take a minute or two and talk about hiring, because some of that has really changed. When clients hire, and you can see they do pretty often, 77% look for a peer referral. That's where they start. They're going to have an informal conversation with one of their peers, and they are looking for a more trusted, invested relationship, and that's what they're going to, kind of be asking about and listening for. And they're going to want great client service. Those are the two things that drive referrals. When you ask clients why they make referrals of the firms they do, that it's all about the client service, the level of investment, and what is it that you're going to do to make sure that you stand out, because peer referrals are the single most powerful way that clients not only learn but also impact hiring in terms of why they will hire a law firm. But before that, once they get a name, they're going to go to LinkedIn. 81% of clients are going to LinkedIn. It's only a question of time before we realize that LinkedIn is the new bio. And clients tell us that they know what to expect from attorney bios, but LinkedIn is always a surprise. Some are, dynamic and full of thought content. Others look like they haven't been touched. A few don't have pictures, which is actually a turnoff for clients, because it says, you're kind of not thinking along the state of the art in terms of law if you're not thinking of at least putting your picture up on LinkedIn. These are some pretty harsh judgments, but these are the judgments that are getting made today. So it's time to think about LinkedIn bios. And then 88% check out a top respected directory or ranking. This is, new. They used to play a more tertiary role. They're growing in importance, and they're only going to, a couple. They don't go to all the rankings out there. They don't check all the rankings out there. But there's a few that, they think are a whole lot better than others, and they will go and they check it out. Interestingly, 13% said they outright worry. They get concerned if a referred attorney is not ranked, or if whoever is doing the pitching is not ranked. That is new. We've not seen that before. So clearly, the ability to get yourself in a respected ranking, and the directory is playing more and more of a role as we see hiring increasing, and we see more hiring, with fewer RFPs at the moment. So, there's more cherry picking, there's more checking out. And it's interesting because what's happening at BTI is our BTI Client Service All-Stars have really, taken on a new role. We've set up at client request a Client Service All-Star site and directory ranking. One of the things we're doing, as you can see, is featuring the opportunity for clients to, for All-Stars to share their client philosophy. You can go in and search by client philosophy. And as we look at Teresa Carnegie, what you'll see is that when clients go on here, they see, of course, what clients say, but they also see the client philosophy. And this has become really valuable to clients because what they do is it gives them an anchor. It gives you, the all-star, and gives the client an anchor to be able to have a discussion about. We've had corporate counsel who comment on it, who embellish it. About 97% of the clients that look at it really, really like it, and they would like to see more of it from their attorneys. This is still in its early stages. We'll be telling you more about this as the year unfolds, but we're very excited. We've got about 16,000 top legal decision makers that review our All-Stars. So we're hoping that this helps the All-Stars really, set themselves apart and use it as a point of engagement to get new work and to help develop their client relationships. Now, one of the reasons this is going to be, so compelling and so important is the amount of new work that's coming into the marketplace. If you look all the way over to the right, the dark blue areas at the bottom of these columns represents outside counsel spending. So what you've got is, most of the spending has always gone to outside counsel, but if you look at what's happened in the last 3 years, what you've got is the increase from 2020 to 2021 is somewhere right around, the 2% mark. But if you look at what happened to, outside counsel, that went up, substantially higher. 2022, you've only got a 1.7 or so % increase in inside spending, but you've got a 7% increase in outside counsel spending. So you've got this enormous surge of business into the marketplace. For those of you doing the quick math, that could equal as much as $7 billion in fees coming in the door. So that's probably, I don't know, take your pick. It's 2 Quinn Emanuels plus a Kirkland. That'll give you the scope of the amount of work that's coming in and why we want to make sure we put ourselves in line to be getting that work, because a lot of it's going to be, pretty heady, pretty high rate work. Not everything, but most of it, big portions of it. And I know everybody on this call, that's what they want. So it's going to be another big year for law firms and very encouraging. If you look at the different practices and segments of the marketplace, for the second year in a row, we've got the majority of practices in the upper right. And for those of you, looking at the chart, the horizontal line is 0. So anything above that horizontal line, the circles, is growing. The higher it is, the faster the growth rate. The vertical line in the middle of the chart is the rate pressure. So average rate pressure is in the middle, less rate pressure to the right, more rate pressure to the left. Anything in the upper right is growing faster than everything else. And you can see that there's a group of practices that are over to the right. They're going to get higher rates. They're growing rapidly. They're providing a lot of opportunity. This is where a lot of the war for talent lies. And what I'd like to do is walk through each one of these practice areas briefly. I'll start with M&A. We are still, even though it's, January, expecting all segments to grow at a record pace. We're expecting more mega deals. We're expecting more medium-sized deals. We're expecting a lot more smaller deals. And this is, it's like the pandemic said, we need to go out and acquire all the talent, all the market, all the technology we can as quickly as we can, or we need to rationalize our assets, so we're going to merge and change our cost structure. But there seems to be, hit fast forward on M&A. The good news from a business development standpoint is that the number of clients that are open to new firms, helping them with M&A, is roughly double what it was just 3 years ago. It's roughly around 41%, where it was around 20%. So part of this is due to, new people coming into the lead M&A role at clients. Part of it is some of the lateral activity, but, clients have an increased demand for their services, so they're looking around. What they're looking for is they really want to be able to look at you without question, know you can get the deal done. This is true with a mega deal. This is true with a small deal. Can you pull it off? And that is somewhat intangible. The second is they're looking for industry-specific insights and nuance. What do you know about this industry? What do you know about the nuances of deals in this industry that's going to be of value to us? And then they want to know that the communication is going to be better than it ever was, because your clients in M&A, are reporting to leadership more often than they ever have. And they don't want to be in a position to say, I don't know, I have to check. They can't call their CEO or EVP back in 2 or 3 days. They need answers. So those 3 things will get you considered, maybe hired, in the new world of M&A. In cybersecurity, again, one of the top 3 growth practices, we see clients by and large telling us, at least a third of clients, that they have no idea if their law firm has a cyber practice of meaning, and they have not seen any business development activity at all in this particular area. And of course, their need is pretty acute. So what we have found, the most effective thing in getting this kind of business is to educate clients, especially in defense, especially in best practice. There isn't a company out there that doesn't want to be living in a best practice world in terms of being able to have the policies and procedures to prevent any kind of data breach, and clients will pay handsomely for this kind of activity. I have to say that this world is a little bifurcated, because the insurance work can have really tough rates. But I divide this market into 2 segments. If you've got the insurance rate, the high rate work's already been done. Now it's insurance defense work. But if you're on the advisory or the areas where you're trying to prevent these things, that's where the work is coming from. Also, members of the IAPP, International Association of Privacy Professionals, very active chat boards, very active learning. Every attorney I know that is in there uses that as a business development tool, and is especially effective. So think about what kind of CLEs you can offer to clients or groups of clients. How can you educate? Clients would love to see you experienced in defense strategies, and letting them know you do this, because the demand is tremendously acute, and it's probably the least recognized practice by clients of their law firms, no matter what size they are. Class actions. I've been looking at the class actions markets for a very long time. And when we started out, they were in the lower left. They were under price pressure. They weren't growing. And they just keep growing, 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 and growing. And what clients want to know to hire you for their class action work is, What's your strategy for defending? And they want to know that up front. Okay, that's the first thing they want to know, because they will all sell you at this point in time that their spending, their budget is very much front loaded. So they want to know the nature of the cost of the defense, compare that to the risk. They want to know kind of your level of conviction in this assessment. And that's how decisions are getting made in class actions. Most of the companies facing class actions have experience with class actions. So they kind of know their way around asking the right questions. They're expecting a sophisticated pitch. And, again, focusing on upfront, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And then translating that into a cost, whether that's asking you for a preliminary budget or them making their own assessment. But that is going to be the key to winning work and getting attention in class actions. Investigations are going to soar. There's so much money floating around and so many questions. We heard about, very high expectations in terms of need in healthcare, financial services, and tech, the growth in whistleblowers, top executive behavior, the list goes on. How clients hire? They're going to hire either through a relationship they have. It's interesting, in a counterintuitive observation, clients say that if it's a super high profile investigation, they may go out to bid, but most of the time they're going to hire through a relationship, or they're going to network their way to a branded firm in investigations. They're not going to go these broad-based RFPs. So if you want this work and the litigation work that may follow, it's going to be about having that strong relationship and the ability to convince them that you can do this with some degree of finesse and keeping this under wraps. Employment. This continues to grow. So many of what clients expected to be, quote, COVID-19 cases are resurfacing or surfacing as labor and employment. And the regulations keep changing, the guidance keeps changing. What clients are really looking for are two things. One is they want to anticipate the next set of mandates and guidance. They want to be ahead of the curve. They want to plan and prioritize. And they also want to know what other companies are doing. This is key because they are going to use the information of knowing what other companies are doing to convince their management that they are on, doing the right things and that they are ahead of the game and that they are, at the state of the art. It's really important to them that they know what others are doing. And what we're finding is a real battleground being drawn between the boutiques, the labor-only firms, and the general practice firms. And the general practice firms, what we're hearing is, are really good at bringing in, business nuance, what other companies are doing, sharing information about what kind of procedures and practices and decisions and policies are getting made or being considered. The boutiques are really, running a fast race and getting new guidance and new regulations out there. A couple of them have software that clients love that get them, the latest on an almost near real-time basis on what's happening by state and sometimes even more local than that. Both are benefiting the boutiques and the general practice. There's still no clear winner, but those are the things that are getting clients' attentions, and those are the expectations. So if you're a general practice firm, they're expecting you to bring your experience and what you know. If you're one of the labor-only firms, they're expecting you to have a crystal ball as to where this is all headed, what to expect next in the near term, very specifically. And the firms that can figure out how to bring that together in one package are gonna probably break away from the market. But according to clients, nobody else has really done that to date. And then the biggest segment of all, litigation, and it's also the most complex. Litigation, you'll find about 60 to 65% of the spending is going to the more complex matters. The rest is going to more routine matters, but the complex matters make up maybe 40% of the matters themselves. So you've got some disproportional spending, and you've got extra rate pressure on the routine work that's coming in, because clients clearly are in a mind where they want to spend on litigation. What's getting the work in litigation? I've heard the word planning more times in the last 6 months than I have in the last 6 years. Clients have about 1/3 more litigation matters than they had just 2 years ago. Just think about that for a minute. If you go back 2 years, the average large company had 300 active matters. Right now, they've got about 380 to 390, and they're coming in fast and furious. So what they're looking for, and what one general counsel just openly shared with me, is, why don't the law firms want to come in and help me with my litigation planning? Help me prioritize, help me, figure out how to triage, how to assess. One way to do that is, the second thing they're looking for is, early assessment. The earlier, the better. And if you can come in with some kind of planning mechanism, whether it be just the litigation for your client, that's it, the person you deal with. If you do a good job there, we know of at least 2 firms that got invited to do it for a department, and then the entire legal department. And they just changed the entire relationship with their client by order of magnitude of the kinds of work and opportunity they're getting. But start small, start with a matter. Clients want to know how you're going to plan, how you're going to assess, what the budget's going to be, what your strategy and approach is going to be, and any comment you have on how they can deal with the flood of work that they're facing is only going to help them. And if we remember back to the early part of the presentation, that'll make them happier in their jobs. Because one of the things that makes them unhappy is the unending stream of work and trying to bring order to it, because the pace is faster than their ability to implement at the moment. So anything you can do to simplify for that is going to put you in good graces and position you for the work. Switching gears, talking about where the opportunities are by industry. Again, if I'm going to market, clients are very much influenced by industry. It's the single biggest differentiator that there is in the market today. It's also the biggest driver of premium rates. I know you're all studying this, trying to figure out where the opportunities are, so I'll try to make it easier. The top growth prospects where there is the highest need and the highest rates are in the blue. The gray is kind of what we would call market neutral. It's going to grow a little bit. There's going to be a little more rate pressure. And the dark gray is where it's a little bit more harsh. If you go to tech, they have 11 areas with acute need and high rates. If you go to financial services, they have 10. Pharma has 9. Healthcare has 8. And food has 7. Those, kind of lead everybody else. Banking looks like it may grow a little bit faster than we've projected based on some things that we're seeing, so that could be interesting as well. But if you're looking at this, it doesn't mean that there's not opportunity in those other industries. It does mean that there is, tremendous opportunity in the areas that I've highlighted. That's where the biggest growth is. Interestingly enough, those areas are amongst the largest spending. So there's a lot of money, there's a lot of need, a lot of higher rate work. Now, the way most of our clients use this when we're working one-on-one is they will use this to target their business development activities. Doesn't mean you don't market to things that aren't highlighted here, but take your incremental dollars, take your efforts and target the places. Some firms are going to be very strong in tech, others are going to be very strong in financial services, healthcare. Pick the area where you can be tremendously successful, outsized successful, and really go and dig in. This is such a strategic opportunity for law firms to establish A, not only growth, but B, strategic growth. What's going to happen? How they're going to kind of embed themselves as industry leaders as this acute need, is going to stay with us a little bit. There is one other area of the market I would like to talk about before we leave this slide, and that is the area, if I can get this to right, is media, which really touches tech. Is going to touch a little bit of consumer goods. It just touches so many areas. Everything, the whole media world is being reconfigured, and there's so much opportunity in M&A and recapitalizations and licensing and cross-content. The list goes on. And we couldn't let that go by without mentioning that. And what I'd like to do and wrap up is basically share with you what clients want now. We talk about this today in our blog post, but also clients are looking for early assessment. The earlier, the better, and the more circumspect you can be, the better. Planning, I talked about. Insight into what other companies doing. I can't emphasize enough how this is their currency to identify what they want to do and convince their peers that they are on top of their game. New ideas. We've got this giant problem. We've been with it for 19 months. What's a new approach? How do you figure it out? A lot of times that comes from brainstorming. If you share one kernel of an idea, you're likely to get another idea back. And that starts a conversation where you get lots and lots of new ideas. And then finally, there is no way you can do any of these things without ongoing, meaningful communication. Simple as that. If you're not talking to clients, voice communication, you're not going to be able to share ideas. You're not going to be able to tell your clients what's going on. You're not going to be able to learn what's going on. And it's going to be really hard to plan and do an early assessment. So clients are placing great value on voice communications despite however busy they are. We also, would recommend client feedback, especially with that 0 to 2 year cohort, because clients have a lot to say. Every client has changed their expectations in the last 12 months. And if you're not tapped into that, well, some of that business going outside counsel may just go somewhere else. So we want to make sure that it goes to you. And then finally, we have done more online surveys of associates in the last 18 months than we've done in the last 18 years. These are a great way to engage, and clients, associates immediately feel as though they've been heard, especially if you share some less sensitive parts of the results with them, and you can begin a dialogue with your associates to kind of change the paradigm and how they're thinking about the firm. So a lot of opportunity. More opportunity to establish yourself with clients and with industries, with all those big spending industries having such acute needs. We wish everybody luck in the next year ahead, and be safe and be healthy. I'd be happy to answer any questions either by phone, by email. If you want to talk about our client feedback programs or our associate feedback programs, happy to do that. And I, really appreciate everybody joining us today. We've got almost as many people as when we started. So thank you for hanging with us, and enjoy yourselves and good luck.